Amplifying an ukulele can be a very tough proposition, especially if you want it to sound acoustically natural. Of all the instruments that I play, this is the toughest one to get to sound good through a sound system. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my live rig from this Bartlett microphone, my pedal board, my amplifier, and some post-processing that I use to sweeten things up. But I'm also going to walk you through how I arrived at each one of these decisions and other options that might work better for you. When we talk about amplifying an acoustic instrument, there are really two ways to go about it, either using a pickup or using a microphone. I'm using a microphone on my instrument, but let's understand the difference between the two and in what contexts one may be better than the other. A pickup is a piece of piezo film that either goes underneath the saddle here, under the strings, or on the soundboard itself underneath. There's some that even stick on top. And this is what most folks have on their ukes. Now, what they are doing is sensing the vibrations from the top or right underneath the strings and translating that to an amplifier. A microphone is picking up like you hear me, like your ears hear me. So a much more natural sound is going to come from a microphone because we get the air of the sound. It is less direct. Now this is a good and a bad thing. Pickups almost always are more resistant to feedback, which means you can get them louder before they start squealing at you. They also don't pick up other instruments around you, which is one of the main issues with most microphones. But with that said, they will never sound as natural as a microphone. So there is always a little bit of give and take with sounding natural, resistance feedback, and what situations you need to play in. For me, I am playing solo a lot of the time in duos and trios, pretty much never with a drummer. My stage situations are not loud. I don't have amplifiers blasting next to me. So I'm able to use a microphone and get it loud enough that I don't have to worry about feedback. So let's talk about why I chose the specific microphone that I'm using. For years at gigs, I have just played into a microphone, and that microphone is the Beyerdynamic M201, which I am also speaking into right now. And on a quiet stage, if I'm playing solo, that is how I'm going to keep playing because there is nothing more natural than a microphone right in front of your instrument. But with a microphone comes issues. If I'm on a louder stage where we need monitors, as I crank those monitors up, the microphone's also going to pick them up and create feedback. If I'm at a small jam session and I need to be plugged into an amplifier, I can't turn that amplifier up to be able to hear myself. Likewise, if there's a bass player sitting next to me, every time I turn up the microphone, I'll also be turning up the bass. And all of this is very problematic. So I needed to find a solution to isolate the sound of my instrument so I could have a bit of control. Now for me, because I don't play in loud contexts really ever, I don't play with drummers, I play in duos and trios, I don't need to get super loud on stage. In fact, even when I used to play with rockabilly bands, we could speak to each other on stage because keeping stage volume down is a beautiful thing. And I think that most people actually can get away with a microphone if you know how to use it and how to work yourself on stage. But with that came the issue of what microphone works on a uke. There are some really wonderful instrument mics out there, specifically the DPA 4099B, the Audio-Technica 35 and 350 series are wonderful mics. The issue is, how do I mount them on here? Because for the most part, they want to clip to the side and have a gooseneck. And with this instrument, if I have anything right here, I'm going to hit it while I'm playing. And that's not going to work for me. So I started researching options that would actually fit on my uke without modifying anything. And this is one of the reasons I went with a microphone. I actually asked Hajime, who made this uke, if he had a recommendation for a pickup. And he advised me against putting one in because he said everyone that he has tried has heard the acoustic sound of the instrument. Of course, we're putting more weight on the top. We are modifying the instrument. Putting a jack in here is putting more weight in the body. It'll change things. This might not matter for you. It matters for me though because I record a lot and I want a beautiful acoustic sound. I love the sound of this instrument. So I stumbled across the Bartlett microphones. And Bruce Bartlett has been making these, I think, for about 15 years or so. And I can't believe I'd never heard of them before because all it does is just clip right on my sound hole like this. And this is an omnidirectional condenser microphone, which means that it needs power, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And omnidirectional might seem odd because we're talking about feedback, and an omnidirectional mic picks up everything around it, where a more directional mic, like the M201, picks up what you're pointing it at. But because it's inside the instrument, it's really picking up what's here. So it gets my hand noise, which I want because that's part of the sound. The attack of the strings is part of the sound, the body of the instrument it gets. So it starts picking up not just the vibrations of the wood and the strings like a pickup, but truly getting the sound of the instrument itself. So let's talk about why this specific model. When I started looking at the Bartlett microphones, I was initially drawn to the mandolin model, not just because if it's for one small instrument, it should work on another, but also because there was an endorsement there from the great ukulele player, Marcy Marxer, who uses it on her mandolin. But I decided to email Bartlett and see what they thought since they didn't have a uke-specific mic. And within a few hours, Bruce Bartlett himself, the man who has designed these microphones, emailed me back and told me that the guitar mic would be a better option because mandolins are just simply louder than ukes, and I would want something that deals with that sensitive sound a little better and can also get a little bit louder while I'm playing those quieter passages. So within there becomes two different versions of the guitar mic that you get. There's the guitar mic and the guitar mic B. Now remember, I said this is a condenser microphone. A condenser microphone is powered, which means it needs what's called phantom power. So the regular microphone option terminates at a microphone cable, an XLR jack that you plug in, and the mixer will provide the power. Now the amplifier I use also has phantom power, so that would work for me. But to be the most versatile, I decided to go with the Guitar Mic B, which has a little battery box that sits on my pedal board, so that I know if I show up at a jam session and I need to plug into a Fender Twin with my microphone, I don't need to worry about not having any power. It's always going to be there for me. So that gave me the most versatile of the options with the Guitar Mic B. They're going to sound exactly the same. If you think that you're always going to have a PA to plug into, always have phantom power, then of course the regular version will be great. Now let's talk about why this might not be the best pick for you. That's why I use this microphone, but let's just take a brief moment to step back and say who it's not good for. There are many folks who benefit from having a pickup. If you need to play really loud, a pickup is a better option for you. In the end, although this gets very loud before feedback, it's still a condenser microphone. It's very sensitive. So if you need to play loud, use a pickup. If you want to use effects pedals like octave pedals that need a very direct sound, use a pickup. If you want something that is very easy to plug and play and will sound exactly the same no matter what room you're in, use a pickup. Using a microphone is a bit of a labor of love. Now, this is not too finicky. I can plug it into most places and have a great sound within just a couple minutes, but it's not as easy as always just plug and play. So let's take a look at my pedal board and my amplifier and the tools that I need live to make this work. My pedal board is about as simple as it gets. I just have the basic tools to bail me out of any audio situation that I might be in. Now, I think that most acoustic musicians would benefit from having a preamp with a DI on it. What a preamp does is take the signal of your pickup or microphone and translate it into the signal that an amplifier or a soundboard wants to see. It just stops things from not communicating well with each other, which could solve a lot of the issues that you have. There's lots of preamps out there that have fancy EQ and chorus and reverb and compression, but I leave most of that up to the sound engineer. And if I don't have one, I also don't want to be messing with EQ for an hour in every single room that I play. I just want my basic tools. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my pedal board right here. A very simple affair. This is the Radial AC driver. We'll talk about that. This is the Bartlett power box. So this is just my microphone, and this is a micro tuner. That's it. The two tools over the years that I've found that I really need in a preamp are a low cut filter and a notch filter. So what a low cut filter does is it filters out all that subsonic noise that you can't hear. And you might think, well, uke is a high pitched instrument, so who cares? Well, those piezo pickups and those microphones are picking up all those low-pitched things that you can't hear. This will clean up the sound and get rid of most of your rumbling problems. A notch filter is a very basic EQ with a narrow band that all it does is if you have feedback, you just switch this on, find the frequency by wiggling that knob, and magically that frequency that's feeding back is gone. And it takes about 10 seconds. It's gonna be different in every room, but that will get you going. So that's it. This goes to the soundboard. Over here, there's an output to go to my amplifier if I need it. Now what about my amplifier? Most of the time I don't use an amplifier, but if I do need to use one, this is my amp right here, the Henriksen Bud. This thing is magical, sounds great, acoustic instruments just plug directly into it. I use my upright bass into it, and I can also have it sitting right next to me, and with the notch filter on here, crank it up almost all the way and get no feedback, which is absolutely incredible to me. So now the important thing, let's actually listen to this and see how it sounds. So I'm going to play two different ukes, my Ancestor's uke and my Wunderkammer uke, and I'm going to play a picked piece on each one, and then I'm going to play a strummed piece on each one to give you a good range of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to swap back and forth between my Biodynamic M201 and the Bartlett. And you'll hear that, of course, the Bartlett doesn't sound as good as a beautiful microphone right out in front of it because it's not positioned as well. But it gets you pretty close. But the other thing we're going to do, besides cycle between these two mics, is cycle between having processing on them. Because the reality is with either of these microphones, what you're actually going to hear as the listener is not the direct sound of the microphone. Of course, we're going to put a little bit of reverb as it would be in the room, and maybe a little bit of compression on there. And after the sound test, we'll talk about that post-processing that I use in my videos. So let's listen. Now, a live sound engineer will add EQ or compression or reverb to the sound to shape it and make it sound more natural. And I do the same here when I'm recording my instrument. It's not just a microphone directly in. So let's talk about what I'm using. The first thing up is always the Universal Audio Century Tube Channel Strip. And this gives me pretty much everything that I need. It's a preamp that I can drive just a little bit to get a tiny bit of fake tube saturation in there, feeling like it's just a little bit clipped in that vintage sort of way. And then there's a semi-parametric EQ, which means I can shape the mids a little bit in here, which is really useful for you. Sometimes you'll find some little peaks in here that you need to pull back just a little bit, but I tend not to EQ much, and if I do, it's just going to be subtractive EQ. I'm never adding anything. Back to the high pass filter that I have on my pedal board, I'm also running a high pass filter on here because if I'm recording with a standard mic, I don't have that on. I just want to make sure that if a truck drives by my house and I didn't hear it, we're not going to hear it through the microphone, and that's really important. And I'm going to put just a tiny bit of compression on here to level out some of these peaks. No big deal. And then it goes into just my Logic stock reverb plugin here. I add just a little bit, and I love to model it off the room that I have, which is a fairly small room. I don't want to sound to you like I'm sitting in a concert hall, because I'm not, and I find it really awkward to watch people play in a tiny little room and have this massive reverb behind it. So I love having just a touch of reverb on here. And then the final thing that I usually add is the Universal Audio Oxide Tape Recorder, which is just a tape compression plugin, and I run it very minimally just to impart a little bit of character on it. If you know me, you know that I love that old school sort of sound. I hope you all have enjoyed this video and a little walk through my process in finding sounds. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments down below. I'm always happy to chat about these things. I'll see you all soon.